We are all mistreating our batteries. It's not really our fault because they are sold this way, just in a box with thin shrink wrap without any warnings or guidance. But I can tell you that flat pack Lipos cells are intended to be protected when in use by a rigid container. They simply aren't meant to be velcroed on, unprotected, and exposed. The risk is battery damage and fires, both when charging and when driving. Nobody wants to burn down your car, or worse, burn down your house over a hobby. So I'm going to share some of the things I've been doing to better protect my batteries on the vehicle. On this channel, we look at the science behind our grown-up toys. If this is how you are treating your batteries, exposed, unprotected, tires rubbing on it, you can and probably should do better. Here's some things I do. When you're buying LiPo batteries, they're simply not designed to be used outside of some sort of rigid enclosure. But in RC crawling, especially custom builds, we do it all the time. I'm going to show you how to better take care of your batteries so they'll last longer and make you and your vehicle safer. Here's an example of some damage I have on one of my batteries. You can see this big dent right here. That's not really supposed to be there. The reason that happened is because on my car, my battery sits right here, and I strap it in with Velcro strap, pretty straightforward. But what happens is when I flip upside down, this top part of my body gets pushed into the battery, which, as you can see, has left a big dent there. It's coming right from where this presses into it, right here. So it's not the end of the world, but it's not ideal. I'm going to cut this open so we can take a closer look at this, but first I want to point out the type of shrink wrap I'm using. This is considered marine shrink wrap because it's got an adhesive on the inside, and you can kind of see the glue around the outside. If you had a wire, two wires, you soldered them together, put this shrink wrap on it, shrunk it down, it would be considered watertight. Now, I'm not trying to make my battery watertight, but I do like the fact that this melts on and adheres to the battery. Let's see how tough it really is. So I'm going to take and just, so this adhesive isn't ultra strong. I do believe it comes off if you try. Now you want to be very careful you don't puncture your cells. So I'm going to probably not, I'm going to be very, very careful that I don't get too close to the cell. All right, so that adhesive isn't ultra strong, which is great. It does come off, but you can see that it is somewhat glued down. It's not really a structural adhesive. It's more of a water seal adhesive. So yeah, it's not totally stuck down like an epoxy might be. All right, so I'm just going to tear this off to avoid accidentally puncturing the battery. Okay, so I've got it completely peeled off, and that adhesive is not super strong. Like I said, it's more of a water seal than it is a structural adhesive. But I do like the idea that it's got some adhesive onto the battery. And I'm going to save this for later because I want to measure this in just a minute. So I'm going to cut a section and just save that. Okay, so this is a battery that I re-shrink wrapped previously, and you can see the damage to this one cell. It shouldn't be smashed flat like that. Now I'm going to unwrap this to take a little bit better look. Out here on the end, there's no batteries, it's just wires and foam, so you can cut out there safely. I wrapped it with this Kapton tape because I wanted to secure my wires nicely. So I'm just trying to peel this off so we can get a better look at it. All right, what I'm trying to do is just inspect the battery here. Okay. Now this is a foil pack. This little edge here, that's just the edge where they seal the lithium polymer on the inside. This black is some foam I stuck on the end. So what I'm really looking at is, has the cell been punctured? And despite being smashed down, it's not punctured. Again, this is not ideal. I'll probably keep running this, but I am switching to a new battery format, so I wouldn't run this forever, but I'm good to run this a little bit longer. Roll the dice a little bit, but everywhere else, you can see that the battery's not puffed up. Oh, there's not a great spot right there. There's some damage there. It hasn't punctured through. If you puncture the battery, get rid of it. If you've got some small nicks and scratches, consider getting rid of it, but you're not in a critical situation just yet. So, again, this is far from ideal, and I will replace this in the near future, but it's not to an emergency situation just yet. And this is precisely why you want to protect your batteries, so you don't end up with this. So now that I've inspected that, let's put that aside. This is a brand new battery. The shell that's on here is quite thin. So I'm going to first take off this clear cover, and if I were you, I would simply shrink wrap over this with a better shrink wrap. But what I'm going to do is remove this for starters. Okay, so this shrink wrap is quite thin. This shrink wrap that comes stock, this isn't a structural shrink wrap. This is merely to hold the batteries in place. And this is only about less than 0.2 millimeters thick. This here is an old piece of just very common shrink wrap that I used, and it's about 0.4 millimeters, so over twice as thick as the clear shrink wrap that comes with it. So you'll do yourself a favor if you just put any additional shrink wrap on it. Now let's look at this piece of marine shrink wrap that I cut off, and it's a 3-to-1 shrink ratio, which is not super uncommon, but it's less common. 2-to-1 is probably the more common shrink wrap shrink ratio, and 3-to-1 will end up with a thicker end product. So if you look at that, that's 1.2. That's really thick. So this marine shrink wrap will give you much more padding and protection than the stock one or even more common shrink wrap. And here's the exact one that I use, 1.25 inch diameter, or about 30 millimeters. And I'll put an affiliate link in the description so you can find the exact right stuff. One of the best things you can do to reinforce your battery is to add some armor, add some protection. What I've done in many cases is cut a small piece of carbon and tape it to your battery. And if you put a little piece of tape to hold it in place and then slide it in your shrink wrap and then shrink wrap around it, this is a really great way to protect your battery. and you should protect it on as many sides as you think are exposed. Usually one or two sides will do it, or even just the top side, whichever side is most likely to get hit and damaged. You can also put it on the outside if your battery's already shrink wrapped. Just take a piece of carbon, cut it a little bit bigger than the battery. Remember, you're trying to protect it, and use some double-sided tape to put it on there. You can also use an L shape if you want to protect two sides. This is a really great way to do it. And this adds infinitely more protection than just having crappy shrink wrap. What I do currently on my car, man, my hood is totally trashed. That paint's falling off all over the place. What I do on my rig is I have this little L-shaped bracket. So I've got a little protection in the front, and you can see there's already some damage right here in this front corner. So it does get hit right here. And what I do is put my battery in, but then what I do is I set on this plate, and then I tighten my Velcro around it. So there, I've got some armor to the front. It's one piece that covers all my batteries, so I don't have to reinforce all my batteries. I just pop this on, and it's protected from the top, from the front. And the drawback to this is it can slide side to side, so I'll probably make something a little more robust next time around when I change my battery configuration. But temporarily, this is what I'm using to keep my body here from crashing into this. So that's the kind of thing you're looking to do to protect your battery. So either put it underneath the shrink wrap or on the outside of the shrink wrap, and maybe get an L shape for better protection. I'm going to protect mine on the outside of the shrink wrap. I just want to show you how this marine shrink wrap works. It's really not different than normal shrink wrap, but there are a couple tips to make it a little bit cleaner. Now, because my wires are coming off the side, I'm probably going to cut a little notch out of the side. And I maybe cut this a little too long. So I'm going to make this a little shorter. And then I'm also going to cut a little corner out. And it's best to cut this as a curve so that when you open it up, you've got a curve right here. If you cut a straight chamfer like this, when you open it up, you've got a corner. So cut a curve like this instead of a chamfer, because then it has a nice round curve instead of this point. So I've got that cut. Let's do a little test fit here. All right, so the wire's out here to the side. All right, let me just show you a little bit of the trick to making this work. Because this is so thick, it takes a little more heat than normal to get it to shrink. I start right around the middle, so it remains centered on both ends. So first I shrink kind of a waist like that, and then I go up. And then the interesting part about this is When it's still hot, you want to push it down so the glue will grab. Ow! It's a little hot. Don't burn yourself. All right, see how that kind of stuck down? That makes for a really nice finish. Probably go back a second time and heat up a little bit more. You can also just push it into the ground. And that holds it nice and flat. So there we go. Got my wires coming off the direction I want. I got my balance port nice and stubby. I kind of wish that were longer. Seems like this was shorter than normal on this battery, but that's all right. Now let's finish this end. All right, when you get to the end here, kind of fold it in, and you can just push it down against something flat. Hold it for a few seconds, and then check that out. It's like, it's nice and squishy from the foam, and it's also glued down. So there you go. This is great shrink wrap for protecting your batteries, but I also highly recommend some sort of carbon reinforcement on top of that. There you go.